yes, thank you so much
Pleasure.
for joining us, and so nice to see you again.
Great
We've
to
met
see
a
you,
few times
yes.
before. Right, let's start off with a general landscape overview. As I mentioned, we're talking about the future of human capital here, and not much time, but I think they're going to redo the clock there. So let us talk a little bit about that overview in terms of how AI has very much impacted literally the majority of industries today. And you have vast experience, of course, across retail, across human capital. What are you seeing within both of those segments? And maybe tell us a little bit more about your experience within all of this as
Sure.
well.
So perhaps I'd start kind of broadly and state the obvious. What is AI doing to the world and to industries today? It's on a broad level improving processes and removing friction. It's essentially allowing us to work faster, to serve smarter, and to scale globally in a much more efficient way. And if I can kind of encompass that in one sentence, it's allowing us to create value differently. So the way we create value today versus the way we created value even 5 years ago is very, very different. And if I look at the two different industries that I build businesses in, if I start with retail, we were managing hundreds of thousands of products, serving millions of customers. So on one side, what AI allowed us to do is to take that customer experience and personalize it to the power of one. What does that mother need? When does she need it? What's her milestone? How can we cater to her specifically? And without AI, we wouldn't have been able to kind of operate so efficiently and smart. On the other side, in retail, AI really doesn't, they talked about it earlier, it touches the entire value chain, whether it is inventory management, price management, logistics optimization, the entire touch points are optimized through AI, essentially allowing us to do what the human cannot do at scale. So the human can do it at a certain point, but once you scale, it becomes very different. So retail aside, my current kind of passion project is with Bait.com. Bait.com is the first business that I founded in the region, and now we're taking it to a different level. So Bait.com has completely transformed. It's the largest jobs board in the MENA region, and we have shifted now through AI from being a manual, reactive, admin-heavy industry across the board to now being a much more predictive, data-driven engine that allows you to hire faster, hire smarter, and connect employers and job seekers better, which essentially allows the employer, the one who's looking for the candidates, to do what they're best at and what they should be doing, and that is relationship management, workforce strategic management, and looking at the organization as a DNA instead of being bombarded with the admin. I'll close maybe by saying that across all industries, we've removed efficiencies, we've taken data, we've made it smart, we've taken operations, we've made it efficient, and we've taken scale and we've personalized it. And that's essentially what AI has done for us.
I mean, it's disrupted the whole sector, isn't it? So would you say that AI is the recruiter of the future, or do you think it's, the biggest threat to human recruiters today and recruitment firms at the end of the day?
So I don't think AI is the threat to recruiters. On the contrary, I think what AI has done is it's elevated the value of the recruiter, because now what AI is doing is it's essentially doing away with all of the redundant, repetitive tasks that recruiters shouldn't be hired to do, essentially. What recruiters are now elevated to do is to really focus on human insight, human connections, the behavior, the DNA of that candidate. And just by example, traditionally, we would have keyword searches to look for CVs. And recruiters would spend days, sometimes weeks, sifting through these CVs, looking at many times CVs that looked identical. Now, what AI is allowing us to do is to sift through these CVs, look at candidate intent, look at candidate behavior, look at candidate skills that are more likely to fit within that role, and instead of the recruiter looking at 500 CVs, they're looking at 5 to 7 CVs. And now the role of the recruiter is elevated to say, does that person fit within the DNA of the organization? Would we want to work with this candidate, etc.? So you're moving the recruiter from being an administrator to being a strategic gatekeeper.
And I suppose it's the ultimate filter at the end of the day, isn't it?
Yes.
But also, on the other side, we've got bias as well into the system. And AI, I suppose, at this level doesn't always get it right. It's all about data in, data out. So how do we make sure that we get, the right quality data to make sure that we have no bias and the right outcome at the end of the day?
So the reality is AI can reduce bias or increase bias. It really depends on how you build it and how you govern it. And so at BAIT, this is very important to us, how we create the right screening mechanisms, the right objective mechanisms, the right assessment tools to ensure that the data we're looking at is based on objective skills, it's based on proven assessments as opposed to subjective impressions. Because again, I'd say fair AI is not accidental. Fair AI is intentional. And so depending on who's building these algorithms, you're either going to be fair or not fair.
No, that's completely true. I wanted to talk a little bit more about sort of women empowerment. You've been a very strong advocate in terms of empowering women and diverse talent as well. So how do you think AI and digital transformation can very much sort of help or maybe even hinder this segment in terms of the workplace? Sure. What are your thoughts on that?
So look, AI can certainly enhance inclusion, not only amongst women, but amongst demographics and minorities that have traditionally been marginalized. So if you go into AI and kind of do a data dump, if you like, essentially you're going to take all of the historic biases and regroup them or relive them. So it's incredibly important to use data smart and to have the leadership that's actually governing that data to remove these biases. And again, so for us, for example, screening is anonymous. Now we have a wider pool of jobs available to a greater number of candidates, which traditionally would not have been the case. You have now, because the screening is more objective, we're actually now pulling out CVs that traditionally would have been not seen because of natural biases on gender or demographics, etc. So the reality is, again, deliberate management of that data will allow you to reduce these biases and increase inclusion.
Because I suppose the thing with bias as well, let's say you've got two amazing candidates for a job. You've got one that's got an MBA but no experience whatsoever in the workplace, and then you've got someone with like lived experience. I mean, how do you sort of navigate that type of bias? Or do you basically, I suppose, pull both of them up together and then the recruiter sort of like decides, or the person that's interviewing? Do they get to that sort of level?
Sure. So more and more employers, and I'm sure there are a lot of employers in this room, more and more employers are not putting MBAs as kind of the prerequisite to hiring. Skill sets and the type of skills that you have now takes precedent. And because skills are ever changing, because skills are ever changing and evolving, candidates of today need to constantly be upgrading and upskilling. So MBAs become perhaps less relevant today than they were a few years ago. Another thing that I will say that from my personal experience with Mum's World in particular, so at one point, our entire C-suite at Mum's World were women, our entire C-suite. And it's interesting because I inadvertently was looking for a candidate that fulfilled a certain hard skill and soft skill, and they always were women. And because naturally I didn't have the bias against women, obviously, they were the best fit for the job. And so what AI allows you to do, again, is to anonymize these naturally subjective conditions.
And it's that subconscious bias as well,
Yes.
that no one realized we all have it. This is the
Yes.
thing. So yeah, really, really interesting. So looking ahead, how do you envision the future of work globally? How do you see that evolving over the next sort of 5 years or so?
Sure. So the future of work will become even more flexible than it is today. It will be skill-based. And skills, as I mentioned earlier, will be ever evolving. So the skills of today will probably be obsolete tomorrow. So depending on how you are evolving your skills regularly and effectively, that's important. And it will be more and more AI enabled. So AI is going to take away a lot of the monotonous, redundant jobs that perhaps don't require empathy, creativity, collaboration, and strategic thinking. And so the values, the human value that is more and more going to be sought after is, are you a collaborator? Do you have empathy? Do you have creativity? Do you think out of the box? Are you a lifelong learner? All of these are values that organizations will be looking out for.
Yeah. So interesting. And everyone says, oh yeah, AI is going to take your job. No, it's the people that can master AI that are basically going to take your job. As the saying sort of goes. If you could give one piece of advice to professionals today that are entering into this AI-driven world of work, what would that be?
So again, I'm just building on what I said earlier. Be a learner. Be curious. Keep on upskilling yourself, look at what's out there, recognize that skills are going to be obsolete faster than they've ever been, and continuously learn. Again, today learning is not limited to an undergrad or an MBA or any kind of formal education. Today you can come online and for $50, teach yourself PHP, for example, or free, you can teach yourself PHP. So be a lifelong learner, test your ideas, and learn to work with people better. And that's a skill, particularly today with the young, with the youth, with social media, as they isolate themselves more and more, that becomes a risk of them kind of pulling out as opposed to getting in to this skill and importance of collaboration.
Yeah, it's dangerous, isn't it? I know social media is sort of like it's bittersweet, social media, because you can learn a lot from it as well, and then you can, sort of retract at the same time. But I mean, my sort of final question, I suppose, is: do you think, with all your experience, you've probably learned so much over the years, especially in this space as well? What are the sort of biggest lessons that you've learned within this space, especially when it comes to talent? Is there anything you might be able to share with us?
So what's interesting is the fundamentals of the past are not very different than the fundamentals of today. Most of the A players I've ever hired didn't have on paper the perfect skills. Most of the A players I hired came to me with a character profile that included lifelong learners, creative, were proactive, wanted to contribute and wanted to change the world. And they were not fearful, they were brave. As opposed to, I hired MBAs from the best schools who came with sharp minds and great pedigrees, yet they didn't have the caliber of the hungry, creative, lifelong learner. So I would say, be that former person, because you're the one who's going to actually make waves. It's not just a degree.
Yeah, it's so interesting, isn't it? And to have that passion for something. And I suppose for you, you've got to have that sort of relationship and right chemistry with the people you're working with at the same time, which is, really interesting. We cannot thank you enough for your time. It's been so nice to see you again.
My pleasure.
Thank you for being with us. Thank you.
Great to see you.